Go to bed.
Are we on?
Locked up and didn't come second. You're on.
Okay. Well, everybody, welcome to Sunday School this morning at Dresden First Baptist. This is the Truth Seeker class, and it's an adult Sunday School class at our church. And we've been studying for the last several weeks about the church God desires, and the method of that instruction is that we have looked at or are going to look at all 7 letters to the 7 churches of Asia Minor that are found in the book of Revelation in chapters 2 and 3. We've already dealt with 4, and so this is the 5th of those churches that we will discuss this morning. The title of our lesson is Vigilant Against Complacency, and the point of the lesson is that we are to stay alert and focused on the things of God. The passage we will consider is Revelation 3, 1 through 6. And I always read from the Christian Standard Bible is the one that I use, and it's the one that literature that I use uses. And so if it doesn't sound exactly like what you're reading, you may be in a different version, translation. But the church, the letter that we will look at this morning is to the letter at the church at Sardis. I was thinking, though, as I talked to Wayne Perkins in the hall just now, that it is the 4th of July, so I would say happy 4th of July to everybody. And we are having some special music this morning. One is that we'll have the chimes choir, or what do you call that? The chimes? The hand chimes choir, okay, or chorale or whatever. And we were asked to wear red, white, and blue, so I wore an actual red, white, and blue shirt and a tie that has the stars and stripes. But several people are wearing things like that. John Johnson, who was one of the greeters, has on his bow tie from the last choir 4th of July special, I think. And Robert and Annie's wearing his as well. Jeannie's wearing her scarf. And Wayne was describing how the difficulty of trying to put on a bow tie. And he said that he had trouble with the feelings on the ends of his fingers or something, right? Is that what you said? Well, you know, one time, and this is patriotic, I think, the David Johnson Chorus sang at the Walter Reed Army Hospital. And they announced that there would be some special guests there, and it turned out there were some celebrities, a lot of sports celebrities, actually. One of them was Tommy Lasorda that I talked to for a while, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. There, people like that were there, and in the crowd. But also, they brought up a bus full of Republican senators. There were about 30-something of them. And so I noticed several that I recognized, but one of them I noticed was Bob Dole. And I noticed that he just walked out on the porch by himself. And he was dressed up. And I thought, I think I'll go out there, talk to him, you know. I'm sure he wants to talk to me. I want to talk to him. And so I went out there, and I realized that he was not the senator. His wife was the senator from North Carolina. And he was just with her. You know, he was the former senator. But anyhow, I went out to talk to him, and we had about at least a 30-minute conversation. It was a wonderful conversation. I won't go into the whole details of that, but one of the things I said to him, I thanked him for his work on the World War II memorial. He was the chairman of the World War II memorial, and he had been on Meet the Press that Sunday. And I happened to see, not Meet the Press, but I saw the reruns of Meet the Press, I guess, actually. And it was in that interview that they had him on because they were opening the World War II memorial. And so anyhow, I said, I didn't realize until I heard your interview that I knew that he always carried a pen, you know, in this hand. And I said, I figured that you have no use of that arm and hand. He said, that's exactly right, you know. He said, but I didn't know that on the hand that you used, that you had no feeling in your fingers. He said, haven't since 1944. He said, since 1944, I hadn't been able to reach in my pocket and know whether I'm touching a quarter or a dime or a nickel until I get them out and look at them. And he actually don't even know I have anything in my hand until I pull it out. Look. And I said, then I noticed and heard that you said that since 1944, you'd never buttoned your own shirt since 1944. Think about that. The sacrifices that some people made for us so that we can worship in freedom and that we can, live in a country like ours. And with all of its problems and all of its troubles, it's still the greatest nation on earth. And we celebrate the birth of that today. But I said, so you've never tied your own tie and you've never buttoned your own shirt since your injuries in Italy. And I said, I didn't know that. And I said, but I thank you for what you did then and what you do now for this country. But he said, that was true until today. He said, I buttoned this shirt that I'm wearing. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, some physical therapist at the VA watched that interview Sunday, he said, and he came over to my house and he said, we've developed this little thing that you can use and I'll teach you today how to button your own shirt. He said, I buttoned this shirt I'm wearing today. And I went, wow. I got to see the first shirt he buttoned since 1944. But anyhow, I just thought about the sacrifices that so many people made for us. And it was after that I read his book about his injuries and recovery. And he was at the Percy Jones Army Hospital in Battle Creek, Michigan for several months, as was Senator Daniel Inouye. You remember that guy from Hawaii who lost an arm. But it was the same hospital where my dad was for 2 years. So my dad was there at the same time those two guys were, and might have known them, might have met them, but my dad never mentioned it. But I wished I'd known that when I talked to Bob Dole. I would have talked to him about that. But anyhow, we'll get into the lesson, just a little side story, just to make us hopefully more grateful for the nation that we live in and the sacrifices that so many people made for us. But here's a church in Sardis that doesn't have as good a news in their letter as did the other four that we've looked at. They kind of get progressively worse, or digressively worse as we look at them. But this one is a church of complacency, and is about the best you could say about them. But as I look at it, I think about myself. I was talking to my granddaughter, Marianne, the other day, who just got back from church camp, and she just had a great time. She went with First Baptist Martin to a camp down in Alabama and just had a blessed experience, I think, there. And she said several young people came to know the Lord, and she was just excited, as we usually are coming back from an experience like that, which is great. And she got appropriately homesick, and so that was good. If she didn't get homesick, then she wouldn't like this place. Wouldn't like us, maybe. So I like it when the kid gets homesick when they're off. But anyhow, she came back, and I was talking to her about some stuff and going on, and I said, she was describing how difficult it was for her to stay on task, and to get something accomplished, under the deadline, that kind of thing. And I said, let me tell you something. I don't know if it's hereditary or not, but I'm going to tell you that you're in the car right now with the chief, the king of procrastinators. It's me. I am the worst that's ever been. And I said, I got a problem with getting on task. And there's just way too many distractions in my life. Just about, I'm almost like a dog walking down a trail. Squirrel, I'm gone. I'm at that. I'm just, and so I can drop anything to do something else. Now I can at a heartbeat. And I was talking to my sister this morning when I was walking on the trail, wishing her a happy 4th, and I was just telling her about that kind of thing, and so anyhow, it's just difficult. for me to stay on task, and I can find something else to do. And I told her, I said, I don't know about you. I said, because she was talking about having gone to St. Louis yesterday to estate sales, and anyhow, and she did say estate sales with a new friend, and I think it's not a female friend. She says just a friend. But anyhow, they did go to a estate sale. But I said, you know what, you got a problem. I think you got a problem. I said, I think if somebody says go, you'd go. She said, you know something? That's exactly right. If they say go, I'll go. She said, I need to clean my house. I need to get this stuff out of my house. I need to do this. I need to do that. I said, but if I said go today, you go, wouldn't you? She said, in a second, I'd be gone. I'm the same way. I said, it's maybe a more trait. I don't know. But it's hard for me to stay focused. And grandchildren are a wonderful blessing for us, all of us. But I had no idea. I guess it's not true for people whose grandchildren live way off, but when they're here, and even when they're way off and they come here, that takes up your time. Now, those kids do, those grandchildren. And there's some people, like Mike Wilson, he just goes fishing all the time. You ain't got one grandkid laying around, But that may change here pretty soon. When's James getting married? April. Oh, that's next year, though. April next year. And you still got some time. Go ahead and rest now because it's fixing to change. But anyhow, it's rare for me and Carol to have any time at home, just by ourselves doing nothing. And but it's hard for me to stay focused. And thank goodness Carol tries to keep me focused, and she has a very delicate and kind way of trying to do that. And but anyhow, I can become complacent, I guess is the point. And I get how that happens. And with all of the distractions and other interests that we have nowadays and things that we can do, it's just difficult to stay focused on God. It's difficult to stay focused on the things that we could do for Him. And if we're not careful, we'll push Him to the side in our list of priorities. And the church at Sardis had become complacent and had lost their spiritual focus. And Jesus warned them and warns us, since this is in the Scriptures, to stay focused on Him. Now, Sardis was a pretty neat place, apparently. It seems like every week I say this is a great city. This is a wonderful city, a thriving metropolis. Well, Sardis, maybe as much as any of them. Although it was inland, it was more centrally located, south of Thyatira and directly east of Ephesus, I think. And it was in the kind of strategically located in the central plain of the Hermus Valley. And it was one of the richest valleys in all of Asia Minor. It was the western terminus of the Persian Royal Road. So that's where the Persian Royal Road ended, right there in Sardis. So you can imagine it was a flourishing place, and it was the capital of the Roman government in Asia Minor, Sardis. It was located on this high mesa or hill, 1,000 feet cliff at one side of it, and it was impregnable, the people thought, and so it was supposedly safe from invading armies. And so I think that may be one of the places where the people of Sardis, they felt so secure that they weren't worried about their own protection even, and they became complacent about everything in their world. Also, they didn't worry too much about jobs or the income there. The city expanded into the valley. There was a river running through there, and gold was discovered in the river. It was the first city in Asia Minor to mint coins. And so they were wealthy. And so they didn't have to worry about their economy and their income. But they were always a place that other people wanted to conquer. because of all those things. And so they were seen as a target. And one of the first people to want to acquire them was King Cyrus, that we read about in the scriptures, that came many years before this. And I got some of this from Wayne Perkins. Wayne did a study, if you remember, back in 2019 on the book of Revelation for the winter Bible study. And he sent me an email this week and said, here's my notes from when I taught this, which were very helpful. He said, apparently you're not getting much good information anywhere else, so I'm sending you my stuff. But anyhow, he said King Cyrus, spotted him and said, we need to take that, but it's impregnable. There's no way to capture a fort that's 1,000 feet up a cliff. How are we going to capture them? And so he sent spies. And one of the spies, one night, accidentally, he saw a soldier up on the wall marching back and forth, and stumbled, and his helmet fell off and fell 1,000 feet down to the bottom, just as might have been expected. And that made that spy think, that's exactly what I thought. It's that far, But then he watched the guy climb over the wall, climb down some places that apparently were in the wall, like with these rock climbers that are about to be in the Olympics. It's going to be a new thing in the Olympics, rock climbing. But then he walked down almost steps all the way down and got his helmet and went back up. And he went, hey, that's something. And he watched him carefully. And he went, reported it, and got, I guess, a large enough army with him to come back. And they went back up the same steps and captured it. He was captured twice, destroyed once by an earthquake. So it wasn't as impregnable as they thought. But it was the center of the judicial administration of Rome, and the citizens of Sardis were just people who were complacent. And the church, what happens to the church usually? The church adopts the characteristics of the community sometimes, instead of the community adopting the qualities and characteristics of the church. And we become like the community, and the church became like the city. And it's a great temptation for any church in any place and in any era. So let's look now first at the letter. We'll look at the first two verses in Revelation 3, verses 1 and 2. Write to the angel of the church in Sardis. Thus says the one who has the 7 spirits of God and the 7 stars. I know your works. You have a reputation for being alive. That's pretty good, isn't it? I'm going to stop there and not read the rest of that sentence. So, very similar to the other letters that we've looked at. This letter is written also to the angel at the church, which is the messenger of the church, probably the pastor of the church, as in the other situations. And Jesus does not identify himself in his letters, but here describes himself as the one who has the 7 spirits. That's debatable as to what that means, as is a debate over what the 7 stars are. The 7 spirits, the numbers are always very important in the scriptures. In the traditions of the Hebrew people, numbers were very important. And it's in the scriptures in Revelation that we think that and understand that the Antichrist, the number of the Antichrist, 666. I wouldn't buy 666 of anything myself. I wouldn't buy something that had the number 666. I just don't like the number. It's an evil number to me. But it's like that in the scriptures. But 777 would be the opposite. It would be the perfect. And so I think that the 7 spirits of God are the perfect number of God, and the perfect power and omniscience and control that God has through his Spirit in this world. And that is the one who has that authority and that power. And Jesus is describing himself as that person. And then he is also describing himself as the one who is overseeing and looking over these 7 churches, the 7 stars. These are his stars. These are the 7 churches that are found in Asia Minor. These are his children. These are his. This is his church. These 7 churches, and so he describes them. And but this is the whole power and wisdom of the Holy Spirit described in Jesus, who is the keeper of these churches. And I think he is saying in even that phrase that all 7 are in need of him. Okay, all 7 churches are in need of him, and they're in need of all of what he can deliver to them and give to them. And it's the same, would be the same message for us in that he is the one who should be guiding us, and he's available with everything that he has to offer to us. But he speaks, it seems that he's heading in a good direction with them when he says to them, I know your works. They have works. They have had works. That's good. And he knows them just like he knows the other churches and has known them well. He's not just coming in there without having inspected what they do, without knowing them at all, trying to make some statement. He's been watching them, and he's aware of what they're doing. And he knows their hearts. He knows their motivations. He knows their current situation. And so he says to them, I know your works, and you have a reputation for being alive. Well, I would like to hear that if I was that church. You have a reputation for being alive. So that's what the other people think about them. That's what the other churches in the Asia Minor think about them. They're a church that's alive. And they're obviously one of the 7. They're mentioned as the one of the 7. But then he says, but you're dead. You're dead. Amen. And one of the things that implies to me is that a church can be busy and dead. A church can do things and be dead. Okay? We got to be careful that we're not just doing stuff. Okay? Doing stuff to make it look good for this community. You know? Just doing. You know? We have to be doing it with the right motivation, with the right spirit, with the direction of God and under his leadership and guidance, in the will of God. If we're not, we're just doing, okay? And might even have a good reputation within the Weekly County Baptist Association, within the Tennessee Baptist Association. We might have a good reputation and be dead spiritually. And so that's not good. But they might have been impressive if we had even gone and taken a look at that church. But a careful analysis and observation revealed that they were just all show. This is Wayne's words, and listen to these. All show, no substance. All reputation and no reality. All form and no force. Okay? He borrowed that alliteration from Brother Don. But it never substitutes for the will of God. Never substitutes for the anointing of God on the church. And he pronounced them spiritually dead. Now, Wayne quoted, just like Brother Don often does, and we all should probably read Vance Havner. You know, he's oft-quoted. He's a North Carolina preacher in a small church, apparently, but known far and wide for his writings and his preaching. But he said that every church and ministry go through 4 stages. First, a man helps form the church. Then there's a movement that the church starts and begins to be a church. Then it becomes almost a machine. and then perhaps at the end just a monument, is what Vance Havner says. A man, a movement, a machine, and a monument. So the church at Sardis was living on their reputation, on the past, what they had done. And I've heard churches do that before. You know, we used to have 100 baptisms a year. We used to have, and we used to have big revivals that lasted 2 or 3 weeks. Protracted meetings, We used to. But it's almost like, what have you done for me lately? Is where we better be. What have we done? What are we doing now? We better not spend too much time thinking about the future and start worrying about right now. What are we doing? What are we doing, and how are we doing it? And we cannot be satisfied with past successes and achievements. There is current work to be done. There are souls to be won and ministries to do. But they had been at one time faithful. They had works that Jesus had seen. But now they existed on their self-professed reputation. He talks about in a few minutes about the white garments. That is the good part of this letter. But another thing Sardis was known for, and it's still known for by what do you call the ones, archaeologists. There is a cemetery. It's one of the largest cemeteries ever uncovered in a Hellenistic city. And it's so big, they call it the necropolis. It had a special spot, a special hill. It's actually the cemetery of 1,000 hills. It was really prominent for that city, the necropolis, the place of the dead, And I think that they were living in that church on the reputations of the dead saints and not of the work of the living saints, which seemed to be little. I was watching a movie yesterday. Carol loves to watch these Westerns, and we were watching them, and I was watching one that had Rock Hudson in it. I forgot the name of it now, but he was the son of a prominent rancher, but had never found his way, but it came to the place where he had to step up, and he had one guy that was a sidekick that kind of went with him into the danger. And as they were just fixing to head off into that, he got on his horse, and as he was getting on it, he said this. He said, a man has to do his own growing, no matter how tall his daddy was. I always liked that line. A lot of us had some pretty tall daddies, but we can't live on his reputation or your mama's reputation. We got to do our own growing. And this church is either going to be alive or dead based on how we handle this church. Our generation, it's our turn to make sure we're doing what God wants us to do here. And Sardis was in a problem. And Jesus says to them, they got to wake up. But